Hey there, and welcome back. Today, I've got my friend Fen with me. We're going to just run through a kind of a two-person mock draft. We're both quite excited. We've both been watching the sport for about 10 years now, and we're both just kind of buzzing to run ideas off of each other. Starting off, we're going to do it so pick by pick. So first pick, second pick. First picks will be me. Odd numbers will be me. Even numbers will be Fen. We're going to do it essentially based off of what we think will happen, as opposed to the thing that I did yesterday, which was more about what I would do if I was the GMs. So we're going to try and predict it, but every year it's really unpredictable, and this year feels like it's more unpredictable than ever. Let's just get straight into it, though. As I say that, I feel like the first pick is completely predictable at this point, unless a trade happens. I don't think the Bengals are even considering. I don't think they have the common sense as an organization to even realize the value of an edge rusher. But regardless, the quarterback position is that valuable that it's going to have to be Joe Burrow. And like I alluded to yesterday, it's just simply that you need to have that genius, that guy who can create something out of nothing, like the Ravens, Chiefs, Texans, who will have to create something out of nothing, have. And the Bengals want to be part of that group, understandably. Is that the pick you'd make?
It's completely chalk early on. I think it's the obvious choice. I don't really see there being any other option. I don't even think they trade out of this spot, so I think that's pretty easy early on. And I think that pretty much segues into the second pick nice and easy. We're not going to have any surprises early on, same as in the draft you did earlier. I would say Chase Young is pretty much a lock in that two pick. I've seen a couple of reports today that the Redskins are looking at trading out and just it's all a buzz. But, it's smokescreen season. I think that Chase Young is such a talent. So many people are saying he's the best DN prospect they've seen since Myles Garrett or whoever you want to pick, that I think it's going to be him at two.
Yeah, I was just wondering, who do you think it benefits to even spread those smoke screens?
I think that when you're looking at how much you can earn in a trade, I mean, at that two spot, you can only imagine the ransom that people will give up. When you look back at the Mitchell Trubisky trade, the amount that the Bears gave up just to trade up one spot from 3 to 2, when realistically they probably could have got him at 3. So that second overall pick is probably, it's essentially the first pick of the actual draft, because the Bengals get so long to think about what they're going to do. That second pick is when it starts to exactly.
So many picks like that. I remember back with Trent Richardson, with Matt Khalil. The flip, sorry, with the flip that they did.
Yeah, exactly.
Terrible moves.
Those early trades, like you have to give up a king's ransom to move, because the people in those high picks know that they hold all the cards. So
yeah, 100%. Okay, so the third pick, the Lions. So I'm not sure if we prefaced it. There's going to be no trades in this, just because it becomes way too confusing. What I would say is that for the Lions pick, if they're going to stay put, they would have to take Okudah, in my opinion. They don't. I think Matthew Stafford is still a good quarterback. He was injured last year, so I don't think they should consider the top QBs unless it is true that he's throwing a hissy fit and looking for a way out, which would also surprise me considering QBs aren't getting snapped up as free agents right now. So I think it has to be Okudah, straight replacement for Slay. They got younger at the position. Not sure if they got better, because that will take time to tell, but there's potential that they got better. And I just think he's an all-round great player, and they will never look back at this pick and think this is the one that derailed the next few years of our franchise. Whereas if they went in a couple of other directions, that could happen. For example, like Simmons, who I do like, but it's just a far less safe pick. So yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think Okudah for me is one of my favorite cornerback prospects I've watched in a while. He's pretty easy to know that he's going to be a great player. I think he looks like that same caliber as, like you mentioned, Marshawn Lattimore, Denzel Ward from Ohio State. Like they've become DBU in these last 5 or so years. So yeah, I definitely think that he's going to be a great pick there. I saw Nate Burleson wanted he thought they were set when they picked up Desmond Trufant to replace Darius Slay, and I don't think Desmond Trufant is half the player Darius Slay was. They need another player on that defensive in that defensive backfield. So yeah, Jeff Okudah, great pick.
Yeah, there's no way Trufant will fill that gap at all. What about pick 4?
Okay, so here's where things starts to get a little bit more interesting. For the Giants, I think you look at the top 2 big needs. I think they need an offensive lineman to protect Daniel Jones. Obviously, a massive investment last year, surprised everyone in the draft with that 6th overall selection. This year, I think it's pretty much going to be offensive linemen, and there's so many to choose from. I find it difficult to separate the top prospects. I know we've spoken about who we like the most, and I think any of them could be a good fit here. But I also really love Isaiah Simmons in this pick. I think he's a defensive playmaker, and he could be kind of a difference maker to move that Giants defense from being that kind of like 20 to 15 type defense to maybe a top 10 defense, just because he makes such an impact with where he can play on the field. So, I mean, I think Isaiah Simmons is the pick at 4. I think he's a generational talent that can play anywhere on the defense, really. So I'm going to put him at 4.
The idea of having Simmons and Jabril Peppers on the same defense, the athleticism involved in that is ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely.
They are similar kind of players. Peppers was touted the same, and maybe it just shows what 2 or 3 years difference is in terms of what people value now compared to what people valued a few years ago. Simmons is obviously cleaner, but maybe Peppers would have been in the teens rather than in the 20s. So
yeah, well, Peppers was an exciting prospect just because of doing everything, playing offense, playing special teams, playing all that.
yeah,
For Simmons, I think it's just that defensive kind of piece that he can play anywhere. He runs downhill so nicely. I think he's an incredible linebacker prospect. And then, you can have a look in at safety, but I personally think that linebacker is going to be where he's going to make his bread in the NFL.
For pick 5 for the Finns, as I put in what I would do, if I was them, I would trade up anyway to get Tua. So I'm obviously going to go with Tua here at 5. I actually I feel like I'm higher on Tua than most people are, or maybe maybe the media likes to spin certain stories and go certain directions, and maybe people do actually like Tua. But yeah, he doesn't have ideal size. He doesn't necessarily have ideal arm strength, and he's a lefty. But I just think that there are enough pros in his. I feel like people are kind of overthinking it, like I did. I'll hasten to admit a few years ago with Deshaun Watson. I think he can play inside the pocket and outside the pocket, and I don't think you can underrate that these days. I think you underrate it at your own risk, and I think that's the biggest trait that people are looking for, as well as having the basic standards in terms of technique, in terms of arm strength, and the rest. Obviously, height with the Kyler Murray pick last year is completely out the window in the modern NFL, and he's not that small anyway. But I just think Tua is the pick here. It's the best. The Dolphins are giving themselves the best chance to get better with picking Tua here rather than picking a Brown, who is great, but it's just not going to improve the roster in the same way that Tua could improve the roster. And like I said, if he is late to come back or he misses a couple of weeks, they've got Ryan Fitzpatrick, who everyone in the league knows can do a job. So it's not an emergency situation where they have to play him straight away. So yeah, I think it works.
Yeah, I think there's not much to say on this. I think if the Dolphins are smart, they'll pull the trigger and they'll take Tua. They won't let all those other needy teams come and get the QB that is realistically probably the second best prospect in this draft at QB. I'm not as high on him. I think him and Herbert are around that same level in terms of I think how they'll be in the NFL. I'm definitely interested to see how it will play out, but yeah, I like Tua there at 5. I think that people will trade up realistically. I think that there will be a trade. Obviously, we're not doing that, but I think that people will trade up to get Tua. Because if you look at how Alabama, when he went down injured, they still scored loads of points. The only thing they didn't do was win. So that's the difference that he brings to the team.
100%. Okay, so pick 6 for the Chargers. Is that going to be a QB again?
So this is interesting. Obviously, the Chargers are all about going all in with Tyrod Taylor, and I don't know if that's a smart decision for them to try and tank for next year to get a QB, or if they are again throwing up one of those lovable smoke screens. If they don't go for Justin Herbert here, I think that they would be silly to let one of these offensive linemen pass, considering the woes that the Chargers have had at offensive line for years and years and years in terms of them getting injured or not being strong enough. So I'm looking down the list, and you've got your pick of the lot. I think for me, the athleticism of Mekhi Becton stands out, but I think that the safest pick to go for here would be Tristan Wirfs. Go with the guy from Iowa because he's got that position, variability. He can play possibly both tackle spots, and definitely I think he can play both guard spots. So if you do have those injuries, you can move him around, and you can slot him into that O-line. It gives Tyrod Taylor ability to kind of do a bit of the things he does in terms of mobility. So I'm going to go with Tristan Wirfs here at 6 to the Chargers.
I think it's reaching a point where your tackles need to be so athletic, and people think they need to be so athletic and big to handle NFL edge rushers, that you're essentially only going to pick tackle prospects who are risky. Like that's almost what it's becoming. And Becton is seen as risky, even though I'm not sure how much I buy into that. But a player like Wirfs, who played in his last year of eligibility in college, he played 10 games at right tackle, 3 games at left tackle. And yet we're describing him as an interior lineman, almost because of that change into, if you're not taking a risk at tackle, you're probably not getting a tackle. And I found that interesting, but I actually absolutely agree. I think he could play right tackle if he was on a good line, like the Eagles or something. But no, I would want him inside, especially for the Chargers. with the problems they've had developing offensive line talent down the years. Players like DJ Fluker come to mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
So so that's a great pick. So as far as pick 7 is concerned for the Panthers, Simmons would have been a dream pick here, but it's obviously gone. But I don't think that's the be all and end all for the Panthers. I actually think that for what they like to do, they are in the position to grab a dream pick in grabbing Derek Brown. I think that he just, it's difficult to understand what is nostalgia and what isn't nostalgia, because Derek Brown is just a Carolina Panther. He is exactly what you imagine. Like Kawan Short before him, and he's just exactly what you imagine, just a huge body on the defensive line. I kind of think of the Lions the same, just having these huge bodies on the defensive line. And it's difficult to think whether or not the fit is actually good or if it's just my nostalgia. But on this one, I'm just going to let them blend. And I think it's the kind of pick they would make. I'm kind of basing that off of a regime that's now gone, but they need that help there anyway. So why not take one of the best players on the board, regardless of the fact whether or not I think the position's valuable? One of the best players on the board, hands down.
Easily. I mean, you know me, I love Derek Brown. I think that he's going to be a really great defensive lineman. I think, he's going to be that Ndamukong Suh level. Maybe he won't play 15 years in the NFL at that high level, but I think he'll give you 10 really good years, really strong years in that interior. I don't think he's going to be a game breaker like Aaron Donald or those types of players where you're going to see him being Defensive Player of the Year candidate every single year. But I think that he's going to be a Pro Bowler like year in, year out. Yeah,
it's like Ed Oliver. It's kind of the opposite of Ed Oliver last year, where it was like Ed Oliver either flops or absolutely becomes incredible. And we saw shades of him probably being the second of those two options last year, and hopefully he can develop. So as far as, so what about for pick 8 for the Cardinals?
So pick 8 here, I think that this is a pretty easy selection. I've had Mekhi Becton in this pick for as long as I've been doing mock drafts. I think that they would love to get that athletic, big left tackle to play alongside Kyler Murray. They watched Mekhi Becton block for Lamar in college. They watched, obviously all the amazing things that Lamar did at Louisville. And Mekhi Becton seemed to hold his own with a really mobile quarterback, enabling him to get outside the pocket and make those incredible runs. Obviously, they don't want Kyler to be running as much as Lamar did in college, but they want to have that option there to keep that offense looking dynamic. Obviously, adding DeAndre Hopkins as the receiving threat, you want to be able to get him downfield and be able to draw those long passes, and they wouldn't be able to do that without an offensive line bit of help there. So, I think Mekhi Becton is the easy choice here for me at 8.
Yeah, and I think he's only got better as well. His last year of college was his best season. And it was also his slimmest season. And people just assume because he's big, he's fat, but ultimately, he's the kind of player who can't control his weight because we see that so much. But I think he showed the commitment to get his weight down to become a pro, and I don't expect him to just lose that commitment now. It is very different to a kind of Jonah Williams where it's like he's always had it, but no, there's no reason to believe that Becton will lose that.
No, exactly. I think you think back to Orlando Brown, incredible prospect who dropped down because he didn't really show that willingness to work out and do all the things right on in the drills and at the combine. Mekhi Becton absolutely did, and that's why he's shot up to be a top 10 pick.
I think he's a victim of the stereotype, and if he does fall, which I don't think he will, it will be because teams haven't necessarily been able to interview him and get him in the building, because I highly doubt there's anything physical that teams are worried about.
No, exactly.
For pick 9 for the Jags, I'm in love with this pick, and I think that they could do it. I think that people want a run on receivers because it looks good in your mock draft to have receiver go 11, 12, 13. But I don't understand why the Jags wouldn't take Jerry Jeudy. Obviously, they have other needs. And they could add to the offensive line. They'd essentially be doing the same thing as they're doing by adding to the offensive line. But they have a pick at pick 20, and by that point, all the best receivers and potentially all the best tackles will be gone. Depending on where you consider the kind of second band of tackles to be in terms of talent. But I'm taking Jerry Jeudy here. And not to sound like a broken record, it is as simple as they're probably going to be at the top of the draft next year. So you either get a stud tackle or you get a stud receiver, because when that rookie comes, they're going to want one or the other. And I just think their receiving core could really use a Jerry Jeudy.
No faith in Gardner Minshew then from you?
Oh, I have loads of faith in Gardner Minshew. I don't have any faith in Doug Marone's ability to cultivate a good team. And I think that will ruin Gardner Minshew. I think he could bounce back like another team.
Yeah, everyone's just trying to jump ship at the moment from Jags. I think they're an awful organisation, something we've spoken about recently. I think they've got to get this pick right, and I think, be it Judy or Lamb, I think one of those top wide receivers would help to change the offense. DJ Chark seems like he would be best suited to be in that number 2, who can really make some big plays.
Oh, he's not a bad receiver by any means.
Not at all. Great breakout season, but yeah, I think that offense will look good with one of those top receivers. Okay, so here we go to the Cleveland Browns. I think for this pick, they need to be smart. Not something the Browns are technically very good at being with their first round picks, but again, you have to look at offensive tackle. I think that they need to give Baker a little bit more protection so that he can start putting balls out to Odell Beckham to stop him from whinging. They just signed Austin Hooper. They want to be able to spread the ball around to all these weapons that they've invested so much time and money in for Baker Mayfield, their incredible number 1 overall pick that had a really bad year. So I think here that the choice is easy, and I think for me it's Andrew Thomas, and I only say that because I think that he is the one that will be able to play left tackle. I don't necessarily think that Jedrick Wills will play left tackle in the NFL. I think he's a great prospect, and obviously seeing him play right tackle in college, he played it really well. He's great in pass pro and in run blocking. But I think that Andrew Thomas is the guy that's more likely to be an NFL left tackle. So he's going to be my pick here at 10.
I'm just pleased that Andrew Thomas is still being considered in that top group of tackles, because for a minute there, like he was going to slip into this in between, almost group 1.5, where he was too good to be group 2 and not good enough to be group 1. But it's kind of bounced back around now, where people have kind of woken up and they're like, oh no, let's not forget the film. He is actually really good. He seems like the kind of player that scouts would really like. And
exactly, it's that classic case of, when your grade on a player goes down the longer since you've seen them play, that probably means that you're looking at the wrong stuff. You're not looking at the game, you're not looking at the way they played. You're looking at Mekhi Becton running this 5'1", 40-yard dash, and you're thinking, God, that's a tackle that I want on my team. But realistically, Andrew Thomas for Georgia paved the way for an incredible running back in DeAndre Swift, who's, he's not exactly a mauler, he's not a big guy, but he's still able to run between the tackles because he had Andrew Thomas opening up holes for him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the taking Thomas there as well, it creates a dynamic for the Jets. Whereas if I was Jets GM, I would have wanted Thomas because he's kind of solid, and it's about time they took a solid player instead of just 100 defensive tackles. I think
or pass rushers.
I think for me, this pick boils down to now. This is the first pick I'm actually having to think about, and it does boil down to Jedrick Wills against CeeDee Lamb.
That's the dilemma that I would go with as well.
Because they need corner help like nobody, like very few other teams. But CJ Henderson's value compared to these two guys is not even really worth speaking about, as much as I like him. So I would say, but here I'm going to go with Jedrick Wills, just because I think their line is terrible, and their receiving core is not great either. But Sam Darnold's out here seeing ghosts, so let's get him somebody to protect him, who can play in a few different positions, but who I think can play left tackle, but it would make an excellent right tackle. It's just about Chuma Edoga there for the Jets. They've got him at right tackle. They seem to believe in him. He didn't have a great year, but he was always going to be a developmental project. You don't usually take tackles in the 4th round thinking, oh, they're going to save our line. So I think Wills, play him at left, Edoga, play him at right, whichever way around you decide to do it. I think you're going to get good productivity and the whole line will improve. They've invested in the line this year as well with a bunch of journeymen. So hopefully, I think they're just looking at improving that. But that also scares me as well, where it's like they've invested in a couple of B or C grade pros. So maybe they will go CeeDee Lamb because they think their offensive line's going to be fine. When in reality, they've not signed that good players. But I'm going to go with Wills here. I think they should make a sensible choice.
Yeah, I think the Jets are in the classic case of they have too many needs to really draft by need with that pick. I think that for them, the smart thing to do is what you've done is get an offensive lineman. There's loads of receivers in this draft, and realistically, I wouldn't be surprised to see Joe Douglas take 2 or 3 cornerbacks in this draft. In the later rounds. I mean, I'm not 100% sure how many picks that the Jets have on day 2 and 3, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them at least double dip on corners just to see if they can get something there, because at the moment they are decimated.
Yeah.
So the Raiders, I think that Mayock and Gruden are smacking their chops if this is how the draft falls, because I think that CeeDee Lamb is buying away the pick here. I think that they're thinking they can pair CeeDee Lamb with Tyrell Williams, the receiver they paid last year and flashed in parts, did look like a good number 2 again, the same way that he did when he was back at the Chargers. And then you've got Hunter Renfrow playing the slot with Darren Waller at tight end, and that is a great offense. Obviously, Josh Jacobs showed why he, in my opinion, should have been the Rookie of the Year, or the Offensive Rookie of the Year. I don't think it should have been Kyler, but I think that offense does look really nice. Yeah, without the injury, I think you probably would have seen a much closer vote there. But yeah, I think CeeDee Lamb is the obvious choice. I think that he is the most likely in this draft to be a number 1 wide receiver. And that's not saying that I like him more than Jerry Jeudy, because I think Jerry Jeudy is, again, ridiculously good at route running, ridiculously good at getting open. But I can see a future where Jerry Jeudy makes that role as an incredible number 2. Whereas I think CeeDee Lamb is more of that polished prospect that can do everything. And he's so good at making people miss after he makes those contested catches as well. He becomes, I think, an incredible number 1 receiver within the first couple of seasons for that Raiders team.
It's weird. It's a weird time to be a wide receiver, I guess, coming out, because teams are going one way or the other with the position. They're either building a team of Jerry Jeudy's and trying to get clean route runners who can run across the field, can kind of tuck away in between zone coverage and find space, which, like the Niners, trying to replicate the Niners and the Chiefs. Or they're trying to go for a guy who can cause missed tackles, can cause broken tackles, can do everything after the catch. You're kind of one or the other now. It feels kind of different to when you had an AJ Green who just was a good receiver, objectively was a good receiver, wasn't a role player, was a good receiver. So I do agree with the CeeDee Lamb thing, because he's more that side of things, where it would be a number 1 receiver who causes missed tackles, broken tackles. Whereas Jerry Jeudy is going to be an incredible part of a good offense. So yeah, I do 100% agree with that. Jerry Jeudy would be outstanding in a team that already has a good running game. Like, that would be the perfect situation for him, I think. Unfortunately, the Jaguars are currently trying to trade away their running back.
That's the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Pick 13 for the Niners. I'm not massive on Henry Ruggs myself, but they just have such a great roster. I do believe they're going to trade down in this position. They just have such a great roster. It's so difficult not to pick him here. But it is spoiling ourselves. We can't forget that they made it to the Super Bowl with a great defensive line, as well as a great offensive scheme. But those players are mostly still there, with the exception of Emmanuel Sanders, and I reckon they can replace Emmanuel Sanders later in the draft. I would have liked them to trade down, and with the board as it is, I am actually going to pick Javon Kinlaw. Because I think Henry Ruggs, I think it's just people being spoiled, and I don't actually think it's the smart move. And I think John Lynch is kind of obsessed with his own ego at this point, and he's like, I make all the best roster decisions, I play chess with other teams, and I'm just going to go and replace the player that I traded away, get cheaper, get younger, get kind of more athletic in an opposite kind of way, in a big man athletic kind of way, as opposed to a long man. So yeah, I'm actually going to go with Kinlaw here and flip the script a little bit on what was expected. But that is also because I'm not particularly high on Henry Ruggs, and I just assume that if John Lynch is as good of a GM as I think he is, he might not be as high too. So yeah, I'm going to go with Kinlaw on that one.
That is definitely throwing a spanner in the works for me. I was not expecting Kinlaw to be the pick there. As soon as you mentioned Henry Ruggs, I was like, yeah, chalk it up. I'm not really high on him, but the Buccaneers will be happy to know they're getting the replacement for Gerald McCoy finally in Javon Kinlaw. So yeah, you've definitely thrown a spanner in the works. I'm going to have a look at the board here and see where I think that the Buccaneers might go this pick. Obviously, they're the hottest team in town with Brady. Sorry, go ahead.
I would say that the Buccaneers are in a really rubbish pick, really. Like, they're sat here at 14 just hoping the board falls their way.
Yeah,
either Kinlaw,
I agree.
Because I don't think Brown is going to make it this far. So either Kinlaw falls, a tackle falls, or I wouldn't even really say they should be looking at wide receiver. And in reality, if all the players that are gone have gone, they should probably just trade out at this point.
I definitely think they're going to trade out. I've been saying this for a long time. I think that the Buccaneers would be smart to trade back, acquire some capital where there's deep positions that they could have at need, and then take DeAndre Swift. because I think that they need help running back. Tom Brady loves to throw to the running back. You've seen him do it with James White for ages. DeAndre Swift would be the perfect player. I just think that this pick at 14 is a bit rich for DeAndre Swift to come off the board. I'm not even 100% sure he'll go in the first round. So, it definitely brings a bit of an issue there. I mean, D-line is definitely one of the places that I was looking, and I think that the drop-off after Blacklock is pretty strong. Sorry, not after Blacklock. After Kinlaw is pretty strong. Blacklock, I'm giving it away. I think it is someone I think would be a good fit there. But again, it's just a little bit rich. So this is the first pick where I'm really struggling. If I'm the Bucs GM, I'm thinking, who am I going to go for here? Looking at the pick, I think they could probably do with some corner help, and they're looking at the teams behind them. I think that CJ Henderson is he could easily be gone by now. I think the teams could look at him and see that he is that second cornerback prospect, and I think that the Bucs could do with some help on the back end, just to kind of shore up their defensive backfield ever since Vernon Hargreaves didn't pan out. So I'm going to go with CJ Henderson here after Javon Kinlaw was stolen away from me.
I know that I apologise for putting you in that position there. I actually think that Henderson is the pick here. Like, if they're not going to trade away, it's 100% the pick. He's the best player on the board, really, at this point. One of the best players, sorry. I would say him. I actually personally really like Patrick Queen. Yeah. So he's one of my highest players on the board at this point. And I really like Murray as well. And I also like DeAndre Swift. Running back takes its whole other thing, though, doesn't it? So, but no, Henderson's absolutely the pick. They need the help. I'm not sure that they're not really. I think the concept that they're trying to please Brady is a bit abstract. I think Brady, as long as they're adding good players, I don't think he'll really care. Yeah. So
he played with a great defense there, and for the Patriots in his last couple of seasons, they won games with defense. So, he's got some pretty great pieces there in that offense already. They need to shore up that defense.
100%. Yeah, but you handled that with grace. On that one. As far as pick 15 is concerned, for the Broncos, I can picture them moving up to get Ruggs. So I'm going to take Ruggs here, which I'm sure most Bronco fans would be quietly concerned, but also kind of excited at the prospect.
Yeah, I think they've convinced themselves that they love him. I think that they've convinced themselves that they love him because it's all hype and on.
Yeah, because it's not a surprise. Whereas when the Bengals took John Ross, it was a complete shock. And that's why the Bengals fans were completely starstruck, in a negative way. Whereas the Broncos fans have had weeks and weeks of, we're probably going to take him if he's there. So yeah, he'd be a great partner for Courtland Sutton, who I think is actually very underrated and he could be going forward a really good player. Great routes, like a terrific route runner. And I think that getting that speed, it's just perfect, isn't it? Just get that speed to take the safeties back, and then Courtland Sutton can just find the space. I just think it's a really great situation to be in. So yeah, 100% taking him there.
Yeah, no, I think that's the pick if he gets to that point. Like, obviously, all the talk of them trading up for him. I think that there's potential that he could even be that first receiver taken if the Jags don't pull the trigger, if the Broncos want to trade up for him that badly. I mean, it just depends on what you want to believe in terms of all these reports. But I think a little bit of speed to pair with Courtland Sutton, who is an absolute beast, and then Noah Fant, who's a really dynamic tight end. You're looking at building a pretty nice offense there with the 1-2 punch of Gordon and Lindsey now running back as well. That's looking to be quite a nice offense. It just depends on whether or not Drew Lock is the answer.
It's just interesting to imagine whether or not the Broncos would have, put that report out there so that teams look at Ruggs more closely. Teams maybe trade up for Ruggs, and maybe Judy or Lamb could fall to them. Maybe that could be their strategy. I think that'd be a smart way to go. That'd be very Elway to think he's a genius.
Right, so we've got the Falcons. We're at the halfway point. I think we're going to have to start rattling through some of these because some of these mid-round picks they're going to be difficult to predict. But I think that the Falcons one here is pretty easy in terms of who I think they need. So they want to replace Vic Beasley with another. Could be incredible, could be awful, speedy pass rusher. Caleb Von Chason, I think, is a great prospect in this draft under the right tutelage. I've said time and again that I don't think that Dan Quinn is that person. But I think that they're going to take him. I think they're going to see what they can do. Rush as many people after the quarterback and see if they can stay healthy for the first time in goodness knows how long.
Was Dan Quinn incumbent when they had Bruce Irvin? I believe he was, and Bruce Irvin turned out quite well. And he's the similar kind of just athletic freak and different because Bruce Irvin was a complete shock as a first round pick, a complete shock.
Bruce Irvin for the Seahawks.
Yes, for the Seahawks. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember when Dan Quinn made the leap. I think Bruce Irvin was what 2013.
I'm just confusing where Gus Bradley was and where Dan Quinn was.
Yeah,
All
I
right,
mean, it seems like Dan Quinn's been in Atlanta being mediocre for so long now. Right, let's go Cowboys.
Okay. Cowboys. What we'll do there, we'll just rattle off these as quickly as possible at this point. For the Cowboys, I know the kind of conventional wisdom is to take Justin Jefferson here, especially now that Clayvon Chason's gone. I have said to you many times that I'm a huge fan of Jalen Johnson. I think he'd be a perfect selection here because he would just replace Jones really quickly. But ultimately, if this draft is about picking picks that could get picked, I think it's going to have to be Justin Jefferson. Even though I would rather Johnson go here. So yeah, I'm going to go with Justin Jefferson here. He's just pure speed. He'd be a great combo for that offense. He's also he sells shirts. I'm sure he'll sell plenty of jerseys after having a mediocre rookie campaign, because that's just what the Cowboys do. So yeah, it's definitely the pick here, in my opinion.
Okay. That looks good. I think that they're feeling pretty good about what they have there with Murray Cooper and with Michael Gallup, but I could see the Cowboys adding that third wide receiver again, just to try and keep Dak in Dallas maybe. Right, so that brings us to the Dolphins' second pick of this draft, and I think obviously the Dolphins are pretty set. They got Tua, they're happy with who they got with their first pick, and now they need to start looking to build around him for the future. I think that there is a bit of a tier break here in terms of offensive linemen, but I think that Josh Jones is also a tier above everyone behind him. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the trigger on Josh Jones, offensive tackle there from Houston. I think that he did a good job for a very mediocre Houston Bearcats team. He was probably the best player on that team, realistically. And Derek King looked like a really good college quarterback, kind of one of those do-it-all offensive weapons behind him. So yeah, I think he's going to be the pick there for the Dolphins.
Cool. Yeah, I like that pick. Can't complain really. They need offensive line help. So yeah, there's I 100% agree with that pick. It's quite rich, as you said. It's quite rich for his abilities, but the premium is on that position this year. So yeah, as we've spoken about in the previous conversations that we've had, I think if I was them, I'd go defense, just because of the quality of players there. But no, I think it is a good pick. I think it is definitely a good pick.
I think they just need to overhaul that offense, because that offense was so putrid last season. And with 3 first-round picks, it gives you the opportunity to do that. And there's still plenty of great defensive players on the board at 23.
Isn't it just amazing they won as many games as they did win?
Yeah, well, I mean, let's say thank you to Devontae Parker.
Yeah. Okay, so with the next pick, the 19th pick, who do you reckon you would take here?
This is difficult to say. I mean, the Raiders have got their receiver. I think that they could do with getting a corner. Personally, I think that you mentioned Jalen Johnson. For me, I don't see it being Jalen Johnson. I see it being most likely to be Trayvon Diggs or AJ Terrell, because we know what Mike Mayock is like. We know that he likes to pick from those Power 5 teams. He likes the pedigree. He likes tough players. So that means I would lean towards AJ Terrell. We've seen him shop at Clemson plenty in terms of the picks he's made while being at that GM spot. And he's always talked up those Clemson players while he was an analyst. So I think that AJ Terrell will be the pick here. I don't know about you.
Yeah, well, obviously I just asked you to do my job for me. I as you know, I'm not like crazy about a lot of the corners in this draft, and it is my favorite position. I just see a lot of them as second round players. So I'm going to go with Kenneth Murray here.
Okay.
Just because I think it's been spoken about a bunch of times, doesn't need to be spoken about much more, but he's a character guy. Mayock loves character guys. They need some character guys. Maybe Kenneth Murray will keep some of the younger guys out of the strip clubs in Las Vegas. But I just think he's a good player, and he's a player that I want. I know he's a player that you want on your team.
Yeah.
And I'll be frustrated the second he goes off the board. But I think if he goes to Vegas, he would be a really good pick, and I'll be gutted that Hard Knocks isn't in Vegas this year, so I could see this character that everyone's talking about.
No, I completely agree. I've heard so many good things about him, and I've fallen in love with the person. I think that he's an incredible player on tape, and he did a lot for that Oklahoma defense that wasn't really that good considering how well the team performed. A lot of that was him, and I think that he was a really great pick. So I can see the Raiders taking him for sure.
On to the next pick then. So we've got the Jaguars at 20.
Okay, so you took the Jaguars first pick, and I took the Raiders first pick. So I guess I'll ask you what you would do here with the Jags pick.
They've got a lot of places they can go with this pick. I mean, if they do manage to get Fournette gone in the next couple of days, then Swift wouldn't be an awful pick here, even though people don't really value running backs or whatever. But you just look at Josh Jacobs last year. I'm not sure how intelligent that take is. Having taken Jerry Jeudy, I think we're essentially just leaving other holes in the team. I wouldn't be surprised if Blacklock goes here. This isn't where I want him to go, but I think it could go. I just have an idea about him going later that I'm obsessed with. But I actually think at this pick 20, I think they're shocked that Justin Herbert's still there. So I think Justin Herbert's playing. I think Justin Herbert's playing.
You've definitely thrown a spanner in the works there, because I would not even consider that they would take Justin Herbert with this pick. For me, really? I think they take a D lineman. I think they replace Calais Campbell. They replace Malik Jackson of years past. They need a big interior presence that can play outside as well. I've spoken a lot about how I like Blacklock. I think probably more than some people do.
Blacklock's a great player.
I also really like AJ Epinesa. I think that this could be a little bit rich for Epinesa. Yeah. He's going to be late in the first round. I think he's definitely going to be a first-round player. But I think that Blacklock is definitely the player here. I think he's going to be a versatile interior D lineman that can do a lot for that Jags defense. And one of the things Doug Marone can actually do well is get a defensive line talent to perform. So
Justin Herbert isn't who I would pick, but which is obviously not the purpose of what this is. Mm-hmm. I can't even remember who I took yesterday and the one that I would do for the Jags. But I just think that I took Chase on. I think Chase on was still available. Okay. But just I think just trying to think, what would a bad team do? What would a bad franchise do who continually make mistakes, who had AFC Championship roster, and it's not just like the QB was the problem. It's not just like the QB left, the whole team left. So I'm just trying to think, what would a bad team do? And I think the Jaguars would probably take Justin Herbert here if he's available at 20.
I can see them doing that, but I think that they've gone so much in on Gardner Minshew. They got rid of Nick Foles. I think to take QB then after doing that is probably going to unwrite the ship. But you're right, it's the kind of franchise that would do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of terrible franchises that make bad decisions,
the pick, so pick 21. For this pick, I think the Eagles have got a wealth of opportunities here, and I think that their fans are going to influence this because the fans really want a wide receiver. I'm hoping that Howie Roseman, doesn't kind of sink into that. I would love to see Xavier McKinney go here. As I've said to you before, I think that would be such a great pick. I think he's actually a really underrated player who I think if he'd been in a better safety class would be viewed as better, but because he's the best safety in the class, he's not, if that makes sense. No, I don't really see how he's much worse than Malik Hooker. So and Malik Hooker was being spoken about as a top 10 pick. So so for this pick, I would like to go with him, but I am going to go here probably with a wide receiver just because of the media saying that they have to take a wide receiver and maybe to cede into the pressure. And as far as players that I'm sure they would have loved to get Justin Jefferson, but my next receiver on the board to take the best player available is Ayuk from Arizona State.
Yeah.
I think he's really good. And people are speaking about him potentially being available in the second round. I mean, if you're any of those top teams in the second round, you've got to pull the trigger because he has the potential to be a really, really good player. If he falls out the first round, I think he's going to be a really good player. So, here at pick 21, if they are that desperate, I mean, they've made weird receiver picks before taking Nelson Aguilar. So just do it. Just pull the trigger. Just take him.
Brandon Ayuk, I like that. I think for me, I would have him as my second left on the board. Mm-hmm. But I definitely think that he's up there in terms of, if the team likes the fit, then they'll pull the trigger on him. And it's something that, we'll probably be talking about up until draft night, how many receivers are going to go in this first round. So definitely interested to see it, which teams are going to pull the triggers on those later guys. Daniel Jeremiah said that the rankings of all those receivers after those top three are completely different for each team. So it'll be interesting to see who ends up going. Right, so the Vikings, they're here. I know that they've got two picks in pretty close proximity to each other. I think that they have the opportunity to address some needs. With Diggs gone and with Brandon Ayuk coming off the board, I think this is a prime opportunity that they might panic and take a receiver. But I also think that they need corner help. As much as I would love to go with the irony of taking Trayvon Diggs, to replace Stefan on the opposite side of the team. I still think that Jalen Johnson is the best corner prospect left on the board here. So I'm going to go with Jalen Johnson to plug straight into that position. I think that he, like you said for the Cowboys earlier, I think that he could be a number one corner. He's very physical. He gets mucked in on the run game as well. Big frame. I really like him as a prospect for the late picks in the first round. So yeah, that's the pick.
He's absolutely one of my favorite players. Absolutely one of my favorite players. To steal your pick from conversations we've had recently with pick 23, just to get it out there. I know this is one of the most exciting picks in the draft. I'm going to go with. Actually, I think I'm going to go with Cesar Ruiz here.
Ooh,
I've just got to change my mind at the last second, but I think I'm going to go with Cesar Ruiz here. I just love the pick. I just think they're going to have a young QB no matter what, right? Because Cam Newton's probably not going to be a Patriot, so they're going to have a young QB no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
So just get a good run game going, help him out, do what has to be done. Just build a system that will help the young guy, which Bill Belichick is so good at. Get a character guy as well. Get a team guy. Just get somebody who's really going to improve the offense in more ways than one. Because they're going to have, it's going to be weird that first day coming into that dressing room. So just get a guy who's going to be good for the room. So I think Cesar Ruiz, and he's also happens to be a player that I love and happens to be the second highest player on my board at this point. So
yeah, no, I completely agree. I think this is such a Bill Belichick pick, and I'm sad that you went out of whatever you were going to say. I'm interested to know which of my picks you were going to steal there, because I think Cesar Ruiz is the pick. I think that's the pick they will be. But who are you thinking? Who are you thinking that I would say?
For some reason, I thought that in a recent conversation that we'd had, that you'd said that they were going to take AJ Epinesa, but I think I might have got that confused with the Vikings. I think I might have got that confused.
I could see the Patriots going Epinesa here. I think that they would take a nice versatile D lineman, but I also think that Cesar Ruiz is a more Bill Belichick pick.
Yeah.
But AJ Epinesa completely fits the mold of that New England Patriots blue collar defensive lineman. Look what
I just felt like we discussed Bryce Love and you'd mentioned, maybe I was wrong, but yeah.
Let's not talk about Bryce Love just yet. With Justin Herbert still on the board, I think it's a bit rude to talk about Bryce Love just yet.
Quality player.
Yeah. So the Saints are on the board. I think that for them, they have seen their biggest position of need. Kenneth Murray has gone off the board, and I think that for them, I wouldn't be surprised if the top two players on their draft board are Kenneth Murray and Patrick Queen. So I think that Patrick Queen needs to be the pick here. Like we've said, this Saints team is so strong. They've got such a great roster. I think that their one position of need is linebacker, and Patrick Queen has position versatility. I think he could play weak side backer as well as anchor that middle. And the Saints love to do different stuff with their linebackers, and I think Patrick Queen can do it all really. I really like him as a prospect. I think he's super athletic. Obviously, not seeing a lot of him in college. I'm really excited to see what he's going to do in the NFL and how defensive coordinators will use him.
Also worth considering, if you don't get Queen here, it's going to be a big drop off. You're probably going to have to reach for Gay. You're going to have to reach for him into the second round when he's probably a third round player, because Jeremy Chin is probably the next linebacker and he's not going to be there. So there's no way he's going to be there with the deficit of quality in linebackers in this draft.
Exactly. It just depends on what you believe about Zach Bourne, but Jeremy Chin, I think, is the next kind of middle linebacker that's available. And even some people are saying he could be a safety similar to Simmons. So I think the Queen you have to pull the trigger.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, great. So that was the Saints at 24. So at 25, we've got the Minnesota Vikings. So the Minnesota Vikings, who've obviously taken Johnson, right? I believe they took Johnson at 20.
They did, yeah, 22.
Okay. So great pick, I think. I think Zimmer's going to double up on defense if he keeps these two picks, which I don't necessarily think he will. There's a ton of places he could go, but I think I'm going to go with AJ Epinesa. I think every team wants to get edge rush. Every team wants to get better at that position. Epinesa's versatile. He's got great technique. He's just got really good leverage. As Mayek would say, he's a natural bender. And I just think he's a good player. It's just one of those players. It's very difficult with players like him to decide whether or not you're getting a TJ Watt or you're getting a Chris Harris. But I think he is closer to a TJ Watt in terms of just the different things he can do and the different ways he can get past people. He just seems like an intelligent player. I think that's what I'm trying to say. So I think I would go with Epinesa here at 25.
I would be really interested to see how Mike Zimmer uses him in that defense. I mean, they play that more traditional 4-3, and I'd be interested to see him play in that 3 technique just next to Daniil Hunter. Because if you've got Daniil Hunter, speed rush on the edge, you've got AJ Epinesa on the inside. I think that is a combo that is going to wreak havoc in the NFC North.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, the Dolphins again. So this one for me, you alluded to it earlier on in the picks that we had, but I think that this is a kind of carbon copy of the Raiders of yesteryear. They had 3 picks in the first round. They used 2 picks to address need, and their 3rd pick they took a running back. We all saw how putrid Kalen Ballage was behind that awful Dolphins offensive line. With that earlier pick, I took Josh Jones to shore up a little bit of that offensive line, and now I think that they go ahead and they take running back. I'm going to throw a bit of a spanner in the works for some people, though. I don't think it's going to be DeAndre Swift. I'm going to go Jonathan Taylor. I think that he is more likely to be a 3-down back in the NFL. I think that in terms of a team that needs a complete overhaul, needs someone that's going to transform the position, you're looking for Jonathan Taylor. I mean, his production says it all in college, and then he only enforced that by running a 4.39 of the combine and being an absolute monster. I think, the only worry with Jonathan Taylor is that he's, so many carries in college, if that's an argument that you want to give. But I think that when you actually look at him on tape, he is an incredible running back that can completely change the position from being one of the worst position groups in the NFL to being, around the middle to maybe getting close to the top, depending on how well he pans out. So I'm going to take Jonathan Taylor at 26 with maybe one of the biggest wild cards of this first round.
Definitely, yeah. I think the thing with Taylor is running back. He's my 3rd favorite running back, but running backs are so wildly different that almost means nothing. But the Chiefs would love a Swift. Maybe Taylor makes more sense as a 3-down back for the Finns, but I love Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and he's going to be perfect for certain teams as well. So I just think running back's just a weird position group anyway. If you like your guy, take your guy. It's kind of the different. That's why it's less valuable than edge, where you get an edge rusher. An edge rusher is going to be good for most teams. So you get a big, long edge rusher. He's going to be good for most teams. Very few team systems aren't going to fit him. Running back's a completely different ball game.
Exactly.
27, the Seahawks. We've spoken many times about how this pick is definitely getting traded, but just because they love to trade picks away, or they're just going to pick the weirdest guy. So, just thinking to myself, let's just go with someone who is weird. So I'm just trying to look down my draft board and try and think who is weird. So Ross Blacklock is my best player on the draft board at the moment. Him and DeAndre Swift.
Well, he's gone, so you probably shouldn't take him.
Either of those. Oh yeah, of course he is. Sorry.
He went to the Jags, so you probably don't want to take him at 27.
As far as the Seahawks are concerned, I think I'm going to go with. Zach Bourne here. Not too weird, but just a weird fit for the Seahawks, if that makes sense.
Exactly. I think weird for what the Seahawks needs are.
Exactly.
But
not bad value, but what are they going to do?
Versatility is key. I think that's one of the things that you're looking for in Zach Bourne. Like, you've seen him play as that weak side off the ball linebacker. You've seen him play as a pure pass rusher more late in his career at college. He's been a bit of everything. And depending on how you use him, he could be a really, really valuable player. I'm really interested again just to see how he gets used, if the scheme is right for him. But he's again one of those high ceiling, low floor players.
Yeah. 28.
So we come to the Baltimore Ravens, and obviously looking at the needs for the Ravens, they had a lot of wins last season, but they had a bit of a piecemeal there at middle linebacker. You've seen the top 2 middle linebackers go off the board, and then the only other player that I think could be the pick there in terms of getting a middle linebacker is Zach Bourne. Like I said, so that is pretty much out of contention for me, which means they go to their next need or best player available, like they've been known to do. But I'm looking at the board, and I think the best player available is either DeAndre Swift or Yetur Gross-Matos. I personally think that if they were to take DeAndre Swift, that means you've got 4 running backs that you have to roster, plus a fullback in Patrick Ricard. You're not going to be able to do that. You're not getting rid of Mark Ingram. Gus Edwards is invaluable. Justice Hill, they only drafted last year, so I don't see them adding a running back to kind of muddy that pool. So Yetur Gross-Matos is the pick for me there. Get a pass rusher. You can play opposite Matt Judon and hopefully generate a little bit more pressure without having to blitz so much next year.
Yeah, he would. And the fact that he would be rotating as well would be huge, because he's going to need to develop as well. He's going to need to perfect some of his skills. I think that's a good pick. As far as 29 is concerned, I was in love with something that's never going to happen, which is the idea of Blacklock and Simmons being on the same team. It's never going to happen unless the Titans trade up, but I'm just in love with that image if I was a Titans fan. As far as the players left on the board, it's really difficult to project this pick. Tempted to go with Austin Jackson here, even though I think this is a really high pick for Austin Jackson's quality, but they have lost their some of their offensive line this season. I just think that he would be a good addition. Where you play him is really up to the to the Titans, sorry, I suppose. It's getting to that point where I made a mistake in the last one as well. So, but I actually think that for the Titans, I'm second guessing myself on how to even say these names now. I think there aren't a ton of players here they should trade this pick away. I'm going to go with Austin Jackson here. I just think adding to the offensive line, just keep it moving. A lot of money invested in Tannehill now. Can't lose him. So
yeah,
and he's injury prone. So get him protected 100%.
I agree with it. I think that you'll see the premium on offensive tackles go late in the draft, in the first round. I think that obviously as soon as the top ones are gone, then you're going to see people reaching to get that need and that fit at one of the most important positions. Austin Jackson, I think, can do a job at right tackle. I think if it's not going to be him, you look at a player like Isaiah Wilson, who's quite raw but could be a good replacement for Jack Conklin as that kind of bully at right tackle with the good coaching. He could potentially be a really good mauler at right tackle. But then, the drop off after that is a little bit strong. So, yeah, I like the pick there. So here we go. I think the Packers here are maybe about to throw another wild card into the mix, but we're at pick 30. He's fallen all the way down the draft board, much like somebody else who's not particularly enthused to have fallen down the draft board on his draft night in Aaron Rodgers. I would say Justin Herbert is probably going to be a bit miffed that he's lasted to this pick. I don't know if he will, with trades being included. I think the teams might move up. But if he's not gone by this point, he's going in one of these next 3 picks. Someone's going to get him on that 5-year contract. But I think that the Packers are the team left that could do with actually getting a quarterback. We've seen Aaron Rodgers play decline in the last few years. He doesn't seem like the world beater that he once was. And I've said this to you before, but he's actually older now than Brett Favre was when they drafted Aaron Rodgers. So, the Packers organization are no stranger to developing a QB, and Justin Herbert could really benefit from sitting behind Aaron Rodgers for 1, 2, however many years it might be. But there it is. So
Rodgers could benefit from it as well. Good little kick up the bum.
Definitely.
Not that he's not trying. Rodgers still looks like he's trying hard, but it's just that little extra push to get one more ring before, because I don't think he wants to retire with 1 ring. No way.
Absolutely not. So yeah, I think Justin Herbert there at 30. If he doesn't go 30, he's going to be going at 31 or 32 if he's still available.
30, put your money down on pick 31 to get traded. The Niners have almost openly said they want to trade it. They don't have a pick in round 2, 3, or 4, especially if pick 13 they actually use. This pick is gone. Look for somebody to trade back up to potentially get Bryce Love if he's still here at this point, to get that extra year to do what the Ravens did 2 years ago. If they are making this selection, they're just an embarrassment of riches, and I'm going to have to take the best player available because that's what they should do. And for me, hands down, the best player available is I'm going to have to take the second best player available. Sorry, because they don't need DeAndre Swift.
They don't need another running back. They've got too many already.
They don't need DeAndre Swift, so I'm going to have to take the second most valuable player available, which for me right here is Xavier McKinney. I just don't think you can have too many defensive backs at the moment. It will allow them to play a lot of different formations where they've got a bunch of safeties and a bunch of DBs on the field. But I think he does everything. The fit is weird, but it's the best player available, and you can't underestimate how much that could benefit them in the future. Just having these players when Sherman gets too old, they have that extra quality on the back end to make up for whatever youngster has to play his position. So that's 100% what I would do here with the best player available.
Yeah, no, I think that is a good pick. Xavier McKinney, I think he's a first-round talent, and like you said, he's gonna fall on the board because he is the only one, and there's so many other needs I think in the league at the moment than safety. A lot of people think that they can get by with a kind of lower-ranked safety than getting one of those world beaters. But I like the pick there if the 49ers stay, which I don't think that they will. I mean, look for a team like the Colts to come up and get one of these QBs on a 5-year contract to sit behind Philip Rivers, But okay, so that leaves us with the Chiefs with the final pick. I mean, if the Chiefs are picking here, like I said, a great opportunity for them to trade back as well with a really strong roster. Best player available tells you DeAndre Swift would be a great pick here to pair with Damian Williams. But also, I think that they believe in the running back core that they have there with Darwin Thompson, that late round selection last year. He seemed okay in bits where he played as a kind of complementary running back. Another thing that you've heard of the Chiefs doing recently is going to get a really speedy wide receiver. So the one that is left now, I think, is KJ Hamler at Penn State. But he's, again, a little bit rich for him to go here at this point.
Yeah, much too rich for my blood.
Yeah, so I think that it is a case of going for that best player available. For me, I'm looking at some of the corners that are left on the board.
Yeah, for me, it's corner here,
and I think that's probably going to be who it is. And for me, my best corner on the board now is Jeff Gladney from TCU. It could be him, it could be Trayvon Diggs, but I think that Gladney is a little bit better than Diggs in terms of being able to contribute in all parts of the game. I don't see Trayvon Diggs as much of a physical corner. And you've seen the Chiefs have success with players like Sean Smith in the past. Your bigger frame, able to muck in. So the Jeff Gladney is the pick to round out the first round.
I like the position, but as you know, I'm not a big Gladney guy. For me, it's Christian Fulton here. I just think he's a playmaker. Kind of would remind me of Marcus Peters in those clothes, and I just think he turn the ball over. Right, give Mahomes as many possessions as possible, and that's the kind of player that I see Fulton as being at the next level. But Gladney is like, corner is a really weird position every year, where everyone agrees on the top one, and then everyone else is just a complete up to you. It's a free for all, and that's just my flavor. That's my taste in corners. Gladney is a good corner. He's just, for me, he's a second round corner. So
no,
yeah.
So I think Christian Fulton is definitely, just to kind of quickly put on there, Christian Fulton is definitely a playmaker that I think maybe less too much on hindsight now, but after you've locked in the final pick, I think that he's going to be one of those first 3 or 4 picks in the second round if he does fall this far. Oh,
imagine him at any of the teams in the top 10. He'll be an instant upgrade. Even if he made it to like pick 42 and the Browns took him, Greedy Williams and Fulton being the second and third choices, they've just got playmakers there. They've just got playmakers on the back end. Okay, that's great. So, all right, Wahid, thanks for doing this with me. It was a lot of fun. We'll probably make some more content next week, and we'll definitely have some other things up this week. But that was our joint draft, and you can look at it after the draft and laugh at us to your heart's desire.
I can imagine there's going to be a lot of picks in there that are so far off, and then the crazy picks that get taken by the Seahawks that nobody's ever even heard of before the draft.
I can see Isaiah Wilson. I can see Isaiah Wilson. He's just an athletic, raw guy, and that's just so Seahawks. Okay, great. So yeah, thanks, Sven, and
thank you, man.
And we'll see you guys soon.